Cold War has to have a moral. Otherwise, what is it all about?
Power is inflicting pain and humiliation. Power is tearing human minds apart and putting them together again in new shapes of your own choosing.
Power is not a means, it's an end.
Welcome to Crimethink.
Thank you very much for listening to our show. This is Crimethink. My name is Rick Smith, and with me as always is Bill Clay, and today we have a very special guest, Malik. No last name, just Malik.
Brown.
Malik Brown. Okay, now he has a last name.
I thought it was Malik Black.
I mean, same thing, right?
I kind of liked it better when it was just Malik because it's sort of like, Sade. Just sort of just a one word, one name.
Well, last week I would have sworn it was Malik Pink, but I don't know.
I think that's more accurate, yes.
Yeah.
So we have a fantastic show for you today, and the topic of the show is the Biden economy. And basically, the TLDR here is we think that it's going to go into the shitter.
Merry Christmas! Shitter was full!
So right now, things are kind of on an upswing a little bit. I mean, considering that some parts of the economy are coming back online. Today, as I look at the calendar, it's March 13th, 2021. And but there's trouble brewing, and that's what the show is all about. So we have some interesting topics to go through. What's the first topic, Bill?
I think the first topic is just the economy in general with COVID, and that's, we never really felt the economic turndown that we should have. There are a lot of people who are out of work and a lot of people who needed to collect unemployment, but the actual economic nosedive that COVID should have caused never happened. And instead, money machine goes burr. The Fed just printed a shitload of money, and they basically doubled the national debt in a year. And we really haven't felt the economic effects of that yet, right? I mean, there's no systemic inflation, major economic correction. Stocks haven't taken a huge correction. Real estate hasn't taken a huge correction. And I think everybody's just kind of waiting on bated breath for when the shoe really does drop here.
Welcome back to Bizarro Wall Street, where bad news is good news, at least when it comes to the economy. This morning's jobless claims number came in disappointingly high. That is terrible if you're looking for work. But it's fabulous for Wall Street because it means the Federal Reserve won't feel compelled to raise interest rates anytime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, close to 40% of the world's money supply has been printed in the past year since the beginning of COVID. So there has been a drastic increase in the quantity of money.
Whoa. Can you repeat that? Did you just say that? Did you say 40%?
Yes, it was 30%, but now all these new stimulus packages are being passed globally.
And who's printing? So okay. When you say 40% of the world's money, you're talking about the total aggregate of all currencies combined.
Yeah, M2 supply. So that's just standard, dollar bills, the equivalent of digital zeros, ones and zeros. That's not treasuries. That's just money.
Okay, but you're talking about
That's M1. Yeah.
The American
or M1. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. I got a little confused here, but since you're talking about M1, you're talking about greenbacks. You're talking about dollars.
Physical dollars.
Yeah, 40%
so 40% of the world U.S. dollar supply has been printed
in the past.
What?
In the past year, if you include this past or the next stimulus package, it's close to 40%. It's like 38. It was 30%, but there was a drastic increase because of all these different packages and things that are being passed. And it's quite interesting that we haven't seen this drastic amount of inflation occurring as a result of that. I mean, 38% or 40% of the world's money supply being printed. That's crazy. I mean,
and that's been true, Malik. That's been true for 10 years, and no one has really put forward, I think, a coherent explanation as to why the Fed has been able to do so many crazy things and yet traditional macroeconomic theories on all sides haven't proven to be true, right? And so, why aren't we seeing inflation? Why didn't we see inflation in 2010, 2012 when the Fed was doing quantitative easing? Why aren't we seeing it now when they're massively inflating the money supply? It's as though like the traditional rule of economics just have ceased to apply in 2010 forward.
Yeah, well, I mean, it seems like there is a group of people at the top that are all working together to make sure that things operate in the way that benefits them. And I think this whole entire COVID situation is a perfect example because we see this massive distribution of wealth being reallocated from middle class Americans and small business owners to large corporations and different stock brokerages and large banks that were allowed to stay open and make money while everyone else got screwed. The system is always going to do whatever it takes for the system to remain in place and for them to stay at the top. So I'm sure that they're pulling the levers in a way that it doesn't hurt them, and they those drastic consequences could probably happen, and they could use it as a buying opportunity or whenever when the time comes.
Right, right. Well, and the easiest lever for them to pull is inflation, right?
Exactly.
I mean, they don't want gradual inflation because that's going to cause all sorts of crazy, unpredictable economic disturbances. But if they did massive short-term inflation, they could play a lot of financial shenanigans with that
And
trick.
and much of the world, I mean, I guess much of the non-Western world is seeing, drastic amounts of inflation, like 20 to 30% in
Right,
a given year. It's just
right.
the Western world and I guess China that hasn't really experienced that.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's definitely strange. Rick, did you step out?
No, I'm here.
What do you think?
I have no idea. I mean, I've wondered the same thing. Ever since Ben Bernanke started this quantitative easing, i.e., flooding the market with greenbacks. Um, everybody was predicting that there would be inflation. It would make sense if there were inflation. Um, I don't, I don't understand how you can have a dollar, which is, ostensibly based on, scarcity, right? How scarce it is, its value, and as you just point out, Malik, you increase it by 40%, and it hasn't lost any of its value, really. That doesn't make sense. Um, unless I guess the one thing that would kind of make sense is if everybody just decided to peg everything to the dollar. It's possible. I have heard some people suggest that basically we're in a new unstated Bretton Woods, sort of a system where everybody just by default sort of pegs their currencies to the dollar, and the dollar being the reserve currency. When you do that, if you control the largest economies in the world and you do that way, then how is anyone going to know? Because it's all value relative to what,
Right,
right?
Yep.
right.
So I guess the moral of the story is that if you have like 80% of the world's value, just decide to will it away, it can, I suppose.
Well, I think that brings up kind of an interesting other question, which is there seems to be kind of a political realignment on the right. And it was partially due to Trump, but another part of it was, I think, the economics of the last 10 years, where the right is starting to understand what fiat really means, right? Not only are our dollars fiat, but even the measures of value that people would have looked to in previous ages, like gold, all of this is made up, right? All of this is artificial. All the numbers don't mean anything. And really, what we should be angling to do is not to own things of value or own things that are profitable or productive or that, regularly pay dividends. We need to be in a climb, a, a, a financial climb. And, that's what capitalism has set up for us. That's what the monetary system has set up for us. And that's really our only option is to pursue that path, because every other path means uh, bankruptcy, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest problem with tangible assets is that they can be easily manipulated,
Right,
much like the price of oil in the past, year or so, where it plummeted dramatically, and now it's rebounding. But I mean, gold, for instance, and the silver markets are manipulated on a daily basis. Bank of America, it's almost yearly. They get caught flooding the market with millions of non-existent silver shares on
right,
paper, silver
right,
certificates, and they end up just artificially increasing the supply, which causes the price to remain below $30 an ounce. If silver and gold actually tracked inflation, they'd be at much different prices. But the large mega corporations and banks and the powers that be can manipulate these prices to prevent people's eyes from opening and realizing, oh crap, gold is $10,000 an ounce, and things are really getting crazy,
right,
and it's just sad.
right. All those
Well,
signals are purposely denied to us, because you're right. If we could see them, then that would reorient our politics. But I also think that those things are, because it's a trillion-dollar game to be working the gold markets the way that people say that BOA is, right? And so, are they really doing that just to signal, to deny signals to retail investors? That's definitely part of it. But I think that also what's going on is every single game in town is rigged. The stock market is rigged. The gold markets are rigged. The commodity markets are rigged. Everything's rigged in order to enrich the people at the top.
Yeah,
So,
sadly. I mean, it's pretty depressing to think about, but it is what it is, and it's important that we open our eyes and realize the situation and predicament that we're in.
well, one thing, I have some older friends, and they were telling me about gold bugs from 70 years ago, screaming about how the Fed was printing too much money and was going to cause the economy to collapse, right? And just every 5 or 10 years in the media, you can see this group of gold bugs who, were screaming Chicken Little, and they were right in terms of their economic theory, right? Philosophically, I want to agree with these guys, but they were always wrong.
Oh, she's a gold digger. Way over town. That digs on me. She give me money.
Now I ain't saying she a gold digger, but she ain't messing with no broke. Now I ain't saying she a gold digger, but she ain't messing with no broke. Get down, girl, gon' ahead, get down. Get down, girl, gon' ahead, get down. Get down, girl, gon' ahead, get down. Get down, girl, gon' ahead. Cutie the bomb, met her at a beauty salon with a baby Louis Vuitton under her underarm. She said, I could tell you rock, I could tell by your charm.
Yeah, well, I mean, the system does everything that they can to stay in power and survive, right? And they'll just manipulate their way to the top.
Right.
well, and I think this is an interesting kind of jumping. I mean, I think there's two different things I want to say. Is one, I think that this is kind of signaling. I think that what we've been experiencing over the past, most pronounced in the past year or so, but it started before that. I think we're moving into a kind of a new. I don't want to say serfdom. We're moving into a new type of feudal system,
Yeah.
and where things are calcifying, and like roles and classes are calcifying in the West in America, and that's the first thing. And because they are calcifying like that, or ossifying, because of that, I think that the threats, I think that the threat posed by cryptocurrency is going to be short lived. I am, I'm a huge fan of crypto. I'm very new to the game of crypto, but I think I think it's fantastic. I like it for a variety of different reasons. That we could do a whole show on it. However, it's such a massive threat to the ability of the oligarchy to manipulate the market. They're not going to lie. They're simply not going to permit it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the problem is that I think the system is going to overstep, and that these entities that are going to ban crypto or prevent people from buying these assets are also going to be banning, your ability to, well, they already are, your ability to run your business, to fight for your livelihood. I mean, for restaurants to operate, all these other things, and naturally, a black market will form, and something has to be the asset that's used to facilitate transactions in that black market. And Bitcoin is probably the safest option. Bitcoin or a more private cryptocurrency like Monero or something like that.
Yeah, but I mean, like that may be true in like some place like Paraguay. I just don't. I mean, the big Big Brother's reach is pretty fucking powerful. I mean, the awesome power of the state to enforce its will, and I mean, particularly, I mean, just look at everyone who is, half the country are designated as domestic terrorists right now, and terrified out of their mind. They move, with a wave of their hand, they can just imprison 200 people, who are just happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. I mean, so I mean, I just and with the awesome control that the tech, monopolies have, I mean, I just don't see how they could just how they couldn't just turn things on and off.
Well,
I
and
mean,
that's
Well, that's what's nice about the decentralized um, infrastructure of cryptocurrencies. In most situations, you can't really turn things off. I mean, you can prevent, more retail investors and normal people from entering the space. But I would imagine that, crypto will evolve, and people will be able to find solutions to those problems. Americans are very strong, and I think that they'll adapt and overcome, at least the ones that want to survive and fight for their future.
yeah, but I mean, if what you're if everything that we've said so far is to be believed, that look, we have basic truths of the marketplace which have been overturned or simply abandoned.
yeah.
By the way,
I don't want to shit on Malik's idealism here, but I'm reminded of the Orwell quote that's kind of the basis of our show here, which is if you want to look at human history and the future of humanity, picture a boot stomping on a face, screaming forever. Um,
right.
the powers that be have an enormous incentive. I mean, have the biggest incentive of all time in order to fuck crypto. And
Right.
when Bitcoin first came out, right, it was heralded as something it wasn't, which was anonymous, right? And I think everyone now understands and agrees that it's not anonymous, right?
Yeah, not anymore.
There are plenty of people who are tracking it, including the government. It was thought to be a
By law, these different services have to track it.
right.
They turn all of the information over to the government.
I mean, there's ways to buy and operate in that network, um, completely incognito. Not Bitcoin itself, but other private coins.
Other private
Without,
coins, you're right, but
yeah,
specifically for Bitcoin, several of the promises have not come true. Right? It is not anonymous. It is never going to function as something that is transactional,
yep.
and there are a bunch of weird things financially that are going on with Bitcoin as well. Right? Um, it is the prices aren't predictable, aren't really tied to reality, and then the other I think big issue is 80% of coins have never been traded once.
Sure. Well, I mean that's like any market or any um, yeah, any market like the stock market or the .com bubble. There's a lot of different assets that really have no value. And what's great about cryptocurrency is that if you're somebody that has an idea and has the skills to develop that idea, you can generate the fourth or fifth or next generation of cryptocurrency and find solutions to the problems that you're outlining. And I think naturally the market will select those tokens or those coins that facilitate those transactions in the way that people want, and those coins will rise to the top and they'll become successful. That's why the market is naturally ranked the coins that we have now in the way that they are. A lot of people don't understand that Bitcoin and Ethereum are the only two real cryptocurrencies that traditional investors and big whales and mega corporations and banks have invested in. The remaining 99.9999% of the market is completely retail investors doing exactly what I just described.
Right.
Just trying to figure out, what's the next generation crypto? How can we facilitate faster transactions? How can this network become more private? And that just comes with coding and time.
I mean, that's one way of looking at it. I mean, we're also new enough, I think, in the history of coin, where things might go towards freedom and ingenuity and innovation. They may not, right? And I don't think it's an inevitability.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I mean, China has developed a digital yuan or yuan, and other banks are looking to develop different digital options to their paper currencies.
Right.
And I mean, if crime exists, which here in America and everywhere else in the world, crime does exist, you will need a currency to transact with. And right now, that's cash or Bitcoin or a private coin. But if they eliminate paper cash and we're stuck with a digital currency, people are going to have to adapt and find a way to transact, whether that be a cryptocurrency or another tangible asset that they can feel and touch.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, that's an interesting observation. It's I mean, to a certain extent, governments have to permit a certain level of criminality
Right.
as a sort of to let off steam.
Right.
Um,
I don't think they look at it like that. Practically, I think you're right, but I don't think folks within the government understand that. Kind of like the plot to the Matrix, that they have to allow the rebel alliance to exist just to accommodate human psychology.
Yeah, you need the purge.
Right.
well, I think that some my personal theory on why it's taken so long for pot to become legalized all over the place. I think we've talked about this before, Bill. Is that I think that for the lowest socioeconomic strata, there is so much of for if the lowest socioeconomic strata in society relies extremely heavily on crime to augment their income.
Yeah.
And I mean, and so if you legalize pot, you take away a major staple of that particular economy.
You're right in your observations, you're wrong in your conclusions, because if that were true, then I think the elected representatives who were closest to those communities would favor decriminalization and not legalization.
It's
Right.
the opposite.
Right. And instead, the people arguing for the greatest regulation of these businesses after they're legalized are usually the inner city and legislators, right? And it's oftentimes the conservatives who opposed legalization, saying, well, let's not over-regulate this thing, or let's regulate it just like a normal business. And, the liberal legislators are the ones that want to strangle it to death with regulations. And I think that's just, sometimes we can be too clever by half, maybe in our thinking and, even on our show. The leftists really do believe the bullshit that they say. And they can't stop themselves. So your theory makes total sense, and if they were rational people, they would operate that way. But I've seen firsthand that they don't.
Well, yeah, but I mean, on the other hand, how many states have legalized pot?
I think
quite a few.
Yeah, 30. Let me look it up.
It depends on what your definition of legalized pot is, too.
Yeah, because some of it have it highly regulated, even if it's legalized.
Yeah, it might be just for medicinal purposes or...
Right.
33 states allow the use of marijuana in some form. There are key, like Colorado, you can buy it for any reason, any time. There are quite a few states in the middle of, that somebody could drive to very easily and get pot for any reason.
Yeah, that's pretty fucking degenerate.
True, but my point is that the legislators don't necessarily act what we would consider rationally in this situation. And frankly, to circle that back to our topic here, we consider ourselves, big brain podcasters, but the legislators and the people involved, they're just kind of drones on autopilot. They have their ideology and they pursue it, and it either works or it doesn't. But the consequences of what they argue for, they're so divorced from that there's really no accountability to it. The left-wing legislator arguing for the regulation of pot doesn't think that, hey, maybe this might put my own constituents in jail when they violate the regulations. I mean, they just don't think that way, and it's really startling that they're so myopic.
I mean, that's kind of based if you really think about it.
Yeah. Well, I think the simple right-left divide blinds most people, I think, in government and in politics. And so even if they're afforded contrary data points, it's really hard for them to see through the programming. And, I knew a guy who was in real estate, and he said he made all of his money because nobody could see the politically incorrect things that were so obvious to him, right? And he said he tried to explain this one time to a major investment firm, and they said, well, that's not ethical. And he said, well, I mean, I'm making trades, just I'm doing so based on logic that's not politically correct, right? And they said they didn't want to make that money. So I think there's a lot of lying going on by all sorts of people who do know better. They just don't want to admit what the implications of that would mean.
Well, it's so easy. With a flick of the pen, you can shut down an entire industry.
Yeah.
You can shut down an oil pipeline from the United States to Canada.
Right.
So I think ultimately, and then of course you can you have this yapping class of propagandists, over the airways,
right?
Who just who sell it, and so I think the first thing is that sadly I think if crypto if it truly becomes a massive threat, they're gonna find ways to take direct action to either to co-opt it. Most likely, I think that's what will happen.
Right.
You're gonna
which will probably come in the form of a digital central bank currency.
Could be.
Oh God, that's awful to even think about.
Yeah, well, they're already doing it in China. They're literally eliminating their paper currency as we speak.
Yeah, I heard that they're talking about doing that in Venezuela too, right?
Yeah, so they have I think it's called the petrol dollar, which is kind of
Yeah,
funny. And it's based off of oil or something, but it kind of failed. No one's really using it. They're using Bitcoin instead.
right.
God, what a disaster.
Well, I heard it's because they regulate how you can trade the petro, and so you can buy petro, right? They'll sell it to you, but you can't move it across the international boundaries. I mean, just typical government bullshit when it comes to moving your money around. Um,
Yeah,
frankly,
it's crazy how um just how incredibly well these people are operating on cryptocurrencies despite their predicament, despite their terrible infrastructure. I mean, people are literally making mesh cellular networks where they're taking Raspberry Pis and hobby electronics and building towers where they can ping back to someplace that has internet access and make transactions. It's very ingenious, and it's like they're really um, just facing insurmountable odds and still performing, and that's what naturally happens when you take away people's livelihoods and their future.
yeah, if I ever won the lottery, one of the things I would definitely want to do is go deliver about 1 million guns down to the people of Venezuela so they could go kill everyone in their government. But
In Minecraft.
in Minecraft, in the novel that I'm writing, but yeah, it's just really unbelievable. But I mean, these governments are shameless, and they don't give a fuck about what the consequences of their policies are.
No, clearly not. I mean, and most of the public, the vast majority of the public, even in this country, are completely asleep.
Yeah.
They're just totally. I mean, they'll buy into the
Well,
bullshit.
and that's true, but I would also say, like, I think a lot of people are pretty aware to what we're talking about. They may not have the right terms, or some of they may not make the right connections, but they always get told that they're isolated, right? They never get told that they're correct and that these things are going on, that these things are true. And then the media just feeds them such a diet of bullshit and lies. And then, the media is, I feel like such an old man saying this now, but like the media is so simplistic. Like, it's so stupid. Do you remember that thesis? Rick will probably remember this one from about 15 years ago. There's that piece of shit, Thomas Frank, who wrote that stupid fucking book, What's the Matter with Kansas?
Yeah.
And his basic TLDR thesis was, oh, the only way that if people really voted their economic interests, they would support the left. And so the only way that the right can compete is by lying to people and getting them to believe in superstitious shit like pro-life and immigration and all these other issues.
That's hilarious.
Well,
But Syria.
yeah, exactly, Syria. But also just like every little puff piece that's in the media every fucking day is peak neoliberalism, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
Harry and what's I can't remember that bitch's name.
Megan.
Yeah, Meghan Markle. Like they were talked to with naughty names, by the royals. It's like, who is this pandering to? This isn't pandering to some conservative homeschool mom in Topeka.
Yeah, I mean, I used to watch the mainstream media on a daily basis just to see kind of what's going on. And I mean, I haven't watched television in like a month and a half, like on a religious basis. I've completely cut it out because, like, after Trump, everything's just been stale and garbage.
Well, and they just have to kind of like pump people's emotions all the time, right? They have to pump people with all these race hoaxes. They have to pump people with like, oh, gay people have it so bad, boo hoo hoo hoo, hoo, and like, oh, these trannies are killing themselves because reasons, boo hoo hoo hoo, hoo. you know. And it's just like every little emotive story they can find to pump people's dopamine release, and it's really just like 75-year-old librarian cat ladies. Like, that's who like all of our media is designed to talk to, like, aka the fucking NPR audience.
I'm Michelle Norris, co-host of All Things Considered. Think about the name of our show for a minute. It says a lot about who we are and how we approach the news. It means that we do more than just cover the big news events. We also try to see all sides of a story and to make sure we bring all kinds of perspectives into your cars and your kitchens. News that helps you understand your world. Stories that stimulate your mind and touch your heart. Voices that stay with you. This is NPR.
Yeah, well, I mean, I maybe it's because we're kind of in like a slow spell right now, a dry spell, and I bet they'll get really effective. Once a false flag comes about in the next couple years or so under the Biden administration, where they blame some, right wing extremists for some terrorist attack that occurs.
They're going to pull a false flag, probably shooting cops. And I know I said that probably since Bundy Ranch thing 100 times. In the last couple of years, 300, 400, 500 times. You've all heard it ad nauseum. I'm sure you're sick of hearing it. We'll find the clips. We found some of them, but not the specific ones. Because if I was the globalists who are willing to stage all these other false flags, I would have black ops grab these people out of their houses to set up patsies because they fit a profile with their emails, get them in the back of a truck, march them into the Walmart, shoot them both in the head, have an inside job security guy in the Walmart turn the security camera off in that area. This is just one way to do it. I'm not saying this is how it was done. This is just one way to do it.
And it's going to be completely bullshit, but they'll be able to tug on everyone's heartstrings, and the lockdowns will come down. And everything else.
Bill has an interesting point, and I know what he's saying. On the one hand, I think we all agree with that basic thesis that you just kind of laid out there, Malik. But Bill's point is people are much more aware of the game now than at any other point, right? And so in the Trump era, untold millions of people were kind of red-pilled, and they were kind of introduced to this whole concept of the deep state and all these different false flags, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's going to be interesting to see just how, like, for example, in a previous era, selling Syria would have been a fait accompli, right? 20 years ago, that would have been a done deal. 15 years ago, that would have been a done deal. 10 years ago, it was a done deal, right? But now it's not being sold as easily. And I think, and people are seeing through it. People are asking, why the fuck are we in Afghanistan? Why the fuck are we in Syria? How in the fuck is this in our interest to be in either of these places or anywhere else?
What was it that Tucker said the other night about? So another classic example was, this was it like last week. Tucker was ridiculing the flight suits for pregnant women.
Yeah.
And the military brass came out against him, and he said, "Ooh, what are you going to do to me? Are you going to treat me just like Afghanistan, where you make me a billionaire and help my opium business?"
Yeah, he trolled them hard. It was brutal.
And like I can't even imagine even a left-wing host doing that 20 years ago.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, you can kind of sense it in the air if you ever go to, a political event or a rally or something like that. The grassroots is definitely getting further and further right, and they're starting to understand what is the system, who is the system. The real question is how, what are they going to do with this information, and how are they going to use it to take control back from these people on the top.
Right.
Yeah,
it is really difficult. The system doesn't want lower classes earning any money or having any kind of financial station in life. They really do want us basically sharecropping our way into death, right? That's what they want. And so if you look at their policies, right, the lockdowns and the masking, they always made sure to take care of people that they knew would freak out. The unions, the teachers, they did the eviction moratorium. They did the foreclosure moratorium. They're trying to take care of all the immigrants and make sure the immigrants get money. Hell, they're even giving money to prisoners. They're careful, I think, to never make it so that there's any class that's too hungry and too populous to ever threaten the regime.
Yeah, that's a good point. But like speaking about, or I guess what I envision happening, um, is you see this new fight for a $15 minimum wage, and I would imagine that our economy, with the trajectory that we're facing, it could be very easily transformed from people having traditional jobs that are 40 hours a week to more of a gig economy where you're literally chomping at the bit competing with other people, for your labor and for your skills, and it just becomes a dog eat dog world where we're all turned against each other. I mean, that's what we see happening. They already want to reduce the number of hours in the work week, and now they want to increase wages. So the next step is literally just taking away full time jobs, making people part time, and then eventually switching to an Uber model.
Yeah, so you kind of end up getting into like the nitty gritty of employment law. I think actually the left will on some level outlaw the gig economy, right? Because they can do so administratively very quietly with just simple changes in how they determine whether or not that's what's called misclassification of work under unemployment law or unemployment taxes by the states, or how they pay payroll taxes, usually to the state. So the left knows this, and I've heard them talk about it in private. I think this is coming if they ever need to really pull the rug out from under the gig economy.
What's their hostility ultimately?
Well, one, that they're not paying taxes, right? I mean, one, that they're classifying all these people as 1099s. The second thing is that it's easier to skirt around a lot of the left wing laws and the left wing judicial precedents as it relates to employment law. Because you can terminate a 1099 so much cleaner and easier than you can a W-2 employee.
I mean, what else will happen if they keep reducing the hours in the work week and increasing the cost of labor? Like, what's the other? I mean, is it just everything that's not Amazon dying?
No, it's the people who have selective exemptions from the government based on politics that will determine winners and losers, right? And so if the cost of production is so high, then when you give an exemption to your cousin or to your nephew or to your political donor, all of a sudden those people are radically profitable. Okay. So it's just another method and means of control.
Yeah, for all their bullshit, railing against fascism, and I mean, these people, and the merging of the corporate with the government. I mean, these people are fascist in that sense par excellence.
Yeah. Name me any state administrative review board that is conservative or right wing. Like, name me administrative rules anywhere in the country that is like passing a lot of right wing shit.
Right.
It's unheard of.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I think part of it is I could see on a certain level, theoretically I could see a hatred of the gig economy because it gives too much choice to the worker, a little bit a level of too much freedom. On the other hand,
and it fundamentally rewards people who want to work.
Right.
Like, you can't, if you're a leftist, you can't reward that.
But I mean, the point that I was making is, imagine if everybody was on a gig economy system. I mean, that would I think that would screw everything up.
It would, but it would screw everything up because the people who would actually want to work would make and earn more.
So I was sitting in my cubicle today, and I realized ever since I started working, every single day of my life has been worse than the day before it. So that means that every single day that you see me, that's on the worst day of my life.
What about today? Is today the worst day of your life?
Yeah.
Wow, that's messed up.
Maybe.
I don't. I think that you would have a lot of negative consequences, and I mean, it would just turn into a very combative and I mean, cutthroat economic system where you're literally competing with your neighbors for, shitty
I don't like
jobs.
my job, and I don't think I'm gonna go anymore.
You're just not gonna go?
Yeah,
Won't you get fired?
I don't know. But I really don't like it, and I'm not gonna go.
So you're gonna quit?
Nuh-uh, not really. I'm just gonna stop going.
Well, it could be bad. I think it could be bad like that, but I think it's going to be super bad like that for folks for different strata of intelligence. So flooding the country, and this kind of segues a little bit into the next topic, about illegal immigration and or I guess legalizing the 30 or so million people who are illegally here. There's a few different forces that are at work. One, you have this massive tranche of illegals who are operating in the country. And two, you have automation. You've got artificial intelligence and robotics, which, are all set to really take off.
Dyson listened while the Terminator laid it all down. Skynet, Judgment Day, the history of things to come. It's not every day that you find out you're responsible for 3 billion deaths. He took it pretty well.
Over the next 10 years. And, as and part of the solution that McDonald's and others have seen or envisioned is, oh, well, fine. Well, we'll just increase the minimum wage for our workers. We'll make it we'll make ourselves look great in doing so. But realistically, we're going to have burger machines, right? And so you're gonna go to a screen, you're gonna order your burger, and it's gonna be sent to you by a fucking robot.
Right now, McDonald's is making something special for you every month. A burger above and beyond what's already on our menu. And it'll be big on taste. It's called McDonald's Burger of the Month. This month, get the mouth-watering double quarter pounder with cheese. A half pound of 100% pure beef piled high on a sesame seed bun. As for the next burger of the month, we'll be making it equally delicious. What you want is what you get at McDonald's today.
Oh, and so the few workers that they employ are all going to be paid a little bit higher. Now, so you got that automation there, but then you have an exploding number of people at the bottom, and in both senses, both economically, but also intelligence. And so as the number of jobs that you can enter into, based off of your level of intelligence, your IQ, melts away because they're all being replaced by robots and artificial intelligence. That market, the market for those people, is going to become dire real fast. And what the hell do those people do? My God, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how you solve that. That's going to be a crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, people don't understand that they're going to get hit it's going to be like a semi-truck hitting a brick wall. Like, they really don't understand how easily a lot of the economy can be automated, whether that be with software and artificial intelligence or automation. I mean, the number one a profession here in the United States by number, I believe, is truck drivers. And I mean, with the way that autonomous driving is evolving so quickly, that number could be reduced dramatically, especially if these vehicles are automated and driven across wide open spaces in the United States and the North American continent, where people don't need to make split-second decisions and things aren't as complicated.
Full of bitterness and curses, and in their paths, nothing but ruin and misery, and the fear of God is not before their eyes. They have taken the hearts and minds of our leaders. They have recruited the rich and the powerful, and they have blinded us to the truth. And our human spirit is corrupted. Why do we worship greed? Because outside the limit of our sight, feeding off us, perched on top of us from birth to death, are our owners. Our owners. They have us. They control us. They are our masters. Wake up. They're all about you, all around you.
And that's where most truck drivers are. You know, they're driving the Great Plains. So you're going to have not only a bunch of them fired, but you're going to also have a natural redistribution of where the truck drivers are located. I mean, like if you're a truck driver, you're screwed. And, you know, that's just step one. Now you've got to think about high-low drivers, any minuscule labor, like you were saying with fast food. I mean, the entire low-income sect of people are going to be fucked in like 15, 20 years. Completely.
I think it's gonna be a lot sooner.
You know, you say that, and I just have to push back on some of the memes that aren't exactly accurate. Truck drivers right now, they can't find enough of them, and
Yeah,
the pay is
that's
great.
why there's such a drive in developing artificial intelligence and autonomous vehicle technology to replace them, to replace these people that they can't find.
No, I think you're misconstruing the chicken and the egg. Like, which one is driving which? I mean, it's a two-way street, and you know, automation of OTR trucking is not right around the corner, right? I mean, most of them will say it's at least 10 years off, and so why aren't people taking these $75,000 a year jobs?
I mean, if I was young and saw that coming, I wouldn't enter trucking. Not at all. I mean,
Yeah,
that
but I
would
mean,
be
like, what do you mean
a
by
waste.
enter trucking, right? I mean, like,
If I got my CDL and then spent 15 years of my life when I could have spent that 15 years developing my career in a different way, in a job or in a career that could, one, you know, provide more income, and two, just provides better job outlook in 20 years when I'm getting closer to retirement. I mean, a perfect example is you can, if you know, you're relatively intelligent. I mean, not like crazy high IQ, but I mean, if you could go to community college, you can get a Fanuc robot certification and make $45 an hour, no problem. So, I mean, these options exist, and I'm sure that the average truck driver, you know, in his teens or 20s, if he could go back, could easily, you know, accomplish and get these certifications. Um, so, I mean, I would say that it would be idiotic to enter trucking,
well,
especially now.
so I mean, honestly, again, I got to push back against the memes here. You know, truckers are crazy overregulated. You know, they're regulated to 8 hours of driving every day. You know, they could be a lot more profitable if, you know, frankly, if the rules got out of their way. And so the rules, I think, are what's causing the eventual automation of trucking, because, you know, the computer can just drive 24 hours a day. Whereas, you know, you can't build that system right now with trucking, even if you wanted to, right? Even if you had practical solutions to it. So, you know, again, I think it's part of this power dynamic where these jobs are being automated, not because people, you know, the classic meme is like, oh, these are jobs Americans won't do. These are jobs Americans will do, but you prevent them from making more money. And if we had an entirely gig economy, the same thing would be true, where the elites would not let people earn too much money because they know that financial independence means people's political priorities change.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with some of what you've said, but I think that it's the advent of artificial intelligence and the explosion of computing power, along with some other different technologies, is what is driving a lot of the replacement, a lot of the automation and replacement is being driven by this new technology.
Yeah, you would be surprised how easy and how close some of this stuff is. I
Yeah,
mean,
but again,
from
if government wanted to stop it, government could just step in the way and stop it tomorrow.
Yeah, but that's what I guess that's kind of my point. My point is that the people on top, the guys who are running these companies, they want to make more money, and it's a hell of a lot
No, I don't
cheaper.
think it has anything to do with money. It has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with slavery, right? They want a computer because a computer will follow its programming.
yeah, I think that's a better perspective. But the real question is how do these corporations function without people being able to buy their products, right? How does
Yeah,
Amazon exist when everyone's a sharecropper?
yeah. It's a great question. I don't know.
Well, I mean, people still need to buy shit.
I think they want to, and I don't think this is any secret. I mean, some people call it, a replacement strategy. I know that's a pretty controversial topic, but I think there's actually a depopulation imperative among our elites.
Yes.
And I think they would really prefer if birth rates were half of what they were right now, right? I mean, they want a smaller populace because they can see that technology in a generation or in 50 or 100 years means that these are just useless eaters that they don't want to have to feed anymore.
Yep,
Um,
useless eaters that will probably revolt when they're not eating.
right, exactly. And like that's the demoralizing future that they want to craft on us and say, well, sorry buddy, this is just AI taking all your productivity away.
And
Right.
that's what makes these forced vaccinations and vaccine passports very scary, because it's a prime opportunity to sterilize and prevent that population growth from continuing.
Right. Right. But if this was about money, they could give every single person in America as much money as they could possibly spend in a lifetime with how much they've wasted over the past 5 years on bullshit.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this has so little to do with actual money, and I think it has much more to do with political, social, and just control.
Hmm.
We put down on our notes here, our show notes, the cities are being overrun by homeless right now. I think there's a few cities that are real notable for this. Austin, Texas is really notable for this right now. And it's just not being reported in the national media, right? I mean, you can find it a little bit in the local media, um, and you can certainly find it among local people. But like crazy things are going on right now, and they're all being hidden from view, right? I mean, something's going on, and our elites don't want us to know what it is. Um,
What are some other examples?
what?
What are some other examples?
Every major city has like doubled its homeless population.
Hmm.
Where the fuck are these people coming from?
Well, I mean, you also took everyone's livelihood that was in
Yeah, there's that.
a lower economic or socioeconomic class in the past year.
And they basically emptied the prisons.
Yep.
And
And
they've
then now you have immigration,
right.
so that
And
explains
so,
it.
like, why are they doing this? Like, this isn't an accident. These are deliberate policies.
Probably because, I mean, if you have a population that doesn't have financial independence, you have a population that requires dependence on government and a dependence on politicians and elites that will provide that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, is it possible too that these are just failed ideas, failed policies? maybe stuff. Maybe that situation with emptying the emptying the prisons, et cetera, et cetera. To a certain extent, maybe this is just the result. Unforeseen consequences, unintended consequences.
Where 1,000 men have languished under the name of this man, Harvey Dent, who has been held up to you as the shining example of justice.
We're just gonna keep moving you till we can get you in front of the camera.
You have been supplied with a false idol to stop you. Resignation of all of these liars! Of all the corrupt!
Those men locked up for 8 years in Blackgate and denied parole under the Dent Act. It's based on a lie.
We take Gotham from the corrupt! The rich! The oppressors of generations who have kept you down with myths of opportunity, and we give it back to you, the people. Gotham is yours. None shall interfere. Do as you please. But start by storming Blackgate and freeing the oppressed!
Well, I can't understand why the media would not report on this, right? Because it is, in some respects, a humanitarian crisis right in front of people's faces. I saw a legal opinion where local governments are starting to declare regions of known gang activity, and they'll make one announcement and then they'll go arrest everyone. And they're doing this as a way to arrest homeless people wholesale. Now, these are a little more law and order jurisdictions that are doing this, but it should tell us that something's seriously wrong when we're basically, some places are rounding people up to throw them in jail for just because they're homeless, and then other places are basically welcoming them with open arms. And then, in Austin, Texas, they're having fires on the freeway because these homeless camps are, getting lit on fire. Just the problems in Austin, Texas are out of control. Friends report this in other cities too. And this wasn't happening 10 years ago.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just another prime example on why you should move your family out to the boondocks, far away from the city, where they can be independent and be free and safe from a lot of these problems that might arise in the next couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously our show is kind of about the economy, but it's also about investing. And I think if people were trying to rationally predict what's going to happen in 2021 and what this year is really going to shape up to be, you've got the eviction moratorium that's lasting until I think September now, the foreclosure moratorium that's basically lasting that long too. So real estate's kind of a risky speculative investment right now. The stock market, we really didn't get into all the GameStop shit and all the other shenanigans that are clearly going on in the market right now. It's a really crazy time. I mean, I think if you were trying to be a very sane conservative investor right now, there are ways to make money, but I mean, they're all pretty risky.
Yeah, I mean, real estate's just crazy high. And I mean, I think it's a massive bubble because, I mean, perfect example is office space. I'm not sure how many businesses are going to return to having a physical location if they have the ability to work from home.
Right.
You're already seeing it, this influx on the market. So there's that. Home prices are shooting up. I'm not sure if that's because of the low interest rates or something else. That or maybe people are stuck at home and they're seeing the problems with their their space and want to move. But prices are skyrocketing, and I know a few contractors, just general contractors, and usually the winter is very, very slow, and it's their opportunity to relax and get some personal things done. But instead, it's busier than the summer. So, I mean, talk about a bubble that's just waiting to pop.
Well, but is it a bubble or is it inflation?
I mean, I don't know. It's demand. It's an increase in demand. Obviously, prices increase with demand, but it's the demand that's the problem. But I mean, is it
Yeah, it's
artificial?
not.
Is it because interest rates are so low and people think that they can refinance their homes, and then the economy crashes, and then it's
So the way
2008,
that I've heard
2.0?
the way that I've heard it explained by a few real estate brokers is that the is that it's sort of been like a domino effect. The interest rate is so absurdly low. It has enabled folks who first time home buyers who otherwise would be priced out of the market to enter the market. And so you normally when you have somebody who's already purchased a home or is in a home and they sell a home, then it's a one to one. They sell their home, but they buy another home, right? So, but here you've got all these first time home buyers who are now entering the market, and they're taking the supply off the market, and it's not being replaced with anything. So you have the stock of homes, the supply of homes has now been depleted.
I mean, it's crazy. There's shacks out by me that I think are pretty disgusting and should be worth zero or some crazy low amount that are selling in the six digits. It's nuts.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So I mean, the national pricing on national pricing on home has just shot up.
I'm in a few real estate groups, and there are some realtors in there. I don't want to name their locations, but they talk about every time they make a listing now, they're getting all cash offers almost instantly, right? Multiples. Like, what the hell is that about, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, so I watched a podcast earlier this week, and they said in the podcast that I mean, people are just it's crazy where you have to add a 10 or 15% premium to the asking price to even buy a home.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
bonkers.
That's basically what they were describing as well.
Yeah, well, I think part of it is over the past couple of years, the economy, folks in the economy have switched to saving. So there's an enormous amount of savers who are in the market, and they've been taking the supply of money out because they're holding on to their dollars.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, and it's been extremely pronounced, huge. It's been a massive issue. And so that could be part of it. Some people may have been hoarding their shit for the past several years, and now they're kind of cashing in, so to speak, as opposed to cashing out.
Huh.
Pretty dumb thing to do with our dementia in chief in charge right now.
Well, that's just it. I mean, if you have some cash and you're worried that inflation's going to set in, you could buy gold, but is gold going to hold its value? Is it not going to hold its value? Who knows, right? Or you could buy real estate. At least you have a physical asset that can be utilized, and you can do all kinds of different things with it. You can take out loans against it. You can rent it. Et cetera, et cetera.
But you would think that would be one of the first industries to get hit. I mean, if you have like massive interest rates and inflation and other crazy things that could happen.
Possibly, yes, but at the same time, I mean, I think people are always going to need some place to live, right? You're always going to need some place to live, and the banks have there's still, I mean, there's a massive shadow supply of homes that are just simply just off the market because of what the banks are doing. So I mean, I don't know. I tend to view it as a little bit more robust. I do think that the home values are gonna plummet at some point here. Probably not too far, not too long from now. But
Yeah, the correction in 2008 was never what it should have been, right? I mean, home value should have gone down 50% in 2008 during the last major housing bubble, and they basically never dipped below 10%. So
well, that's because. So I mean, I remember very clearly. There was a Holman Jenkins article in the Wall Street Journal, and when he advocated just destroying homes, like so that you would destroy some of the oversupply.
which is just stupid. I mean,
It's just stupid, but that's what the banks basically did by
yeah,
taking the houses out of the market.
it's literally the broken windows fallacy. But I mean, okay,
I know. Look, I'm not arguing for it. I'm just saying that's effectively what they did.
Yeah, no, they talked about I think entire neighborhoods in Florida that they bulldozed, but yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah, no, I actually a few years ago, when I was looking to buy a home, I actually found some of those houses.
Oh,
Yeah, that was pretty weird. There was no way to make. I mean, there was theoretically a way you could make an offer on them.
yeah.
It was super creepy. And bizarre.
It's the kind of house they don't build anymore. A relic of a time when the world wasn't in such a hurry, when there was still time for a little charm and elegance. It has stood empty for a long while, and at the price, it is a bargain. For a growing young family, it is almost too good to be true. What do you think?
I love it.
James Brolin, Margot Kidder, Rod Steiger in the Amityville Horror.
God's peace in this house.
But I mean, and I just kind of happened upon them by accident.
Yeah.
And if you look carefully, there are some sites. If you go down the rabbit hole, there are some sites which will list them. But yeah, I mean, they're peppered throughout different neighborhoods. They're sprinkled all over the place, and you always wonder, well, who lives there? Nobody. It's a vacant house.
Right. Which again is just the banks playing games, where they kind of like the situation where they're the only ones making money because they're the ones with the relationship with the Fed. So I don't know, more shenanigans. I think you're both right. I mean, I think there is a correction coming, but
the stock prices. I mean, the biggest indicator or the easiest indicator to kind of see that is the stock prices are just. They are and they have been completely out of whack. Everything's overvalued. I mean, it's just wildly overvalued, in my opinion. I don't even have to be an expert to see that. I mean, but the question is, when is that other shoe going to drop, and what's going to be the thing to kind of send it over the edge, and when is it going to happen? I don't know, but I do have a feeling that. There's all sorts of different things that can go wrong. There's, and we're talking about some of them. Inflation. You're talking about you got a dementia patient in the Oval Office. With a sorority sister. As the vice president. I don't know. I think I don't know.
Well, let's each make a prediction. When's the housing bubble gonna burst? Rick?
Sometime I would say before the end of the year.
Pick a month. I'll say September.
I'll say November.
Malik?
I mean, it's tough. Anything can happen. Well, here's a good question. What do you think is going to cause the housing bubble?
That wasn't the question. Malik, what month?
Oh, okay. All right. I'll say August. Why not?
All right.
But what do you think will actually cause the housing bubble? Will it just be like a crazy earth-shattering event that just causes people to flip shit?
Well, my prediction is going to be that it's going to be the collapse of all the property management companies who realize that they can evict people now, make all the evictions, and then nobody can pay rent at the previous rates. And
Ah,
so,
okay. No, that makes sense. I think you're right, Bill.
yeah, when all those management companies go tits up with all the portfolios that they manage, I think that's going to be a real wake up call
Do
to
you
everybody.
think the Democrats make an extension?
Yeah, I mean, politically, I think that that's probably what they want to do. But I mean, I think their buddies, the banks, are going to be screaming at them that they can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, but is there another option? Is there a way that they could do both? I mean, in the same way of we've been talking about how it doesn't make any sense that we haven't had massive inflation despite the fact that we're flooding the market with more paper currency than we probably have ever.
Yeah.
And the shit hasn't fallen apart. So I mean, clearly, I mean,
Well, they're doing a new round of PPP, so I mean, the shit is falling apart.
no, but I mean, but yeah, but somehow shit is still floating. I mean, the thing about it is that I think that they're gonna look. There's only 2 years before the midterm election, right? Less than that, right? So I mean, they're not going to want to have everything fall apart prior to that, and
Yeah.
they're gonna need something to be a scapegoat, either a war or something.
Well, that's why I asked what do you think's going to cause it, and I'm thinking another 9/11 style false flag, something bigger than 9/11.
The system would really benefit if that happened.
Exactly. It's you could crash the economy, destroy any resistance from people that are financially independent, rally against a new enemy, kind of like what they're doing after January 6th. And I mean, you could really hit a few columns and mark a few things off the checklist very
Well,
easily with
Wait,
something like
I
that.
got it. Richard Spencer blows up a nuclear power plant.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm thinking. Some kind of nuclear, just crazy
Well,
destruction.
okay, so Tucker has been on fire over the past like 2 months,
Yeah.
I would say, and he's been laying out a lot of truth, lot of truth. Now he doesn't get past like the 15-yard line, right? I mean, he's on. There's some truth that's too that people can't handle. But there's one thing that he's so close to being right on, but he's wrong. And so he's wrong in the reasoning why. So one of his thesis is that there's a lot of bad economics, and he could be partially correct. Basically, there's a lot of people suffering right now economically. Everything is down, blah blah blah. But then you got fat cats making money, blah 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 blah. But because there's all this pain and suffering, the elites, as such, are trying to flood the airways and everywhere else with this Black Lives Matter and scapegoating, white supremacist, boogeyman bullshit, right? And so, but his thesis is that it's because it's the fat cats doing it because to cover up the terrible economy. Well, that could be part of it, but I think it's also that they're laying the groundwork for the next war on terror. I mean, they've said that they are,
Right.
right? And like Exhibit A, they're talking about a truth and reconciliation committee. They're talking about a 9/11 committee type committee because of January 6th. For the 6 or 8 months leading up to January 6th, you had you've got articles all over the place about how crazy Christian, white supremacists are the devil. And really, some themes have been really sticking out at me like repeatedly. I mean, this is just all over the place. That they're clearly seeding the ground. It's white supremacy. It's white Christian supremacist, white Christian nationalist. Like these are. So I think that there is going to be some sort of a 9/11 style attack, and I think that there's going to be a massive PatCon.
Yep.
Well, explain to people what PatCon means.
Yeah, so PatCon is short for Patriot Conspiracy. It's the name of a secret operation run by the FBI, possibly in conjunction with. Well, we know it's in conjunction with the Department of Justice, but possibly in conjunction with even the CIA or other agencies as well, in which they, various, the federal agencies, they infiltrate different groups, particularly, patriot-oriented, nationalist-oriented, groups to encourage them to attack, to commit terrorist attacks.
Yeah, the Governor Whitmer, half of the people are federal agents scheme is a very good example.
Say what?
So there was a plot,
right,
by a militia group apparently in the state of Michigan to kidnap Governor Whitmer, and
Well,
it
weren't
turns
they a bunch of Antifa fucks? They're a bunch of leftist faggots.
Yeah, there was one of them that was identified as like an anarchist, but either way, half of the people in the plot were federal agents.
Of course.
So there was like 8 people, I think, that were involved, and 4 of which were federal agents.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, and I think one of they're now like charging one of the federal agents for something. I'm not sure how that works, but VDR did an article on it, so it's
Figures.
pretty weird.
I read something on that story, and like all they had really done was go shooting together.
Yeah, it was something like that, and like the four feds were like, "Hey, let's do this," and then just push this group, and they didn't even. I don't even think they accepted to agree to anything. It was just like texting in a group chat.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
Yeah, people, feds literally fed posting.
Yeah.
God, Fed's gonna Fed.
Yeah, they've only got one trick. Well, and I think the only other thing that we didn't really talk about yet, and we could kind of address pretty quickly, is George Floyd, I Can't Breathe Part 2, which is the shit that's going to happen when Mark Chauvin is found innocent because he died of a fentanyl overdose that every thinking person knows on this planet, but the media will never, ever, ever tell you.
And here's the funny thing. There was a poll that I saw that said that only 38% of Americans believe that George Floyd was murdered. So that's pretty funny. It's a telltale sign. I think it was like Rasmussen. I was very surprised by the results of the poll because you'd think they would manipulate that.
Right. Well, and the most interesting thing about that is that back last summer, it was like 80% who believed that he was murdered or something ridiculously high.
Right.
So between say August and now, it's fallen to 38%.
Right.
That's pretty dramatic.
Well, the city of Minneapolis is hiring a social media expert to quote manage their story during the trial, which is amazing because if the defense did this, they would charge them with jury tampering.
Yeah,
but when the government does it, the rules don't apply.
Yeah, I mean, either way, I think Officer Chauvin's going to get off scot-free, and they're going to go ballistic. And round 2 is going to be a hell of a lot harder than round 1.
Illustrate another point that Bill made earlier about how there's so much that's happening in the country that just simply isn't being reported. I mean, I really, and I just as a side point, I would say, I think that it's that the complete collapse of the field of journalism, in terms of the numbers, the decimation of numerical decimation of journalists has had an incalculable effect on society. Because I think that there's so little coverage of things that are happening, and some of that's by design. Some of that's just simply because there's just no, and you could say, well, maybe it's by design that we just don't have as many journalists. Okay, well that's fine too, but I'm just saying the number of journalists not being there has had an effect, because even journalists, even if they're there, they're hungry, they're looking for a story, they're going to be reporting on some shit.
Well, I hope you're satisfied, asshole. You just blew your chance to cover the world.
Really? Well, guess fucking what? I don't really fucking care. You wanna know fucking why? Because I don't fucking live in the fucking world! I live in fucking New York City! So go fuck yourself!
But, as another illustration of this, how, I was totally unaware of this until I heard it on Tucker. But there's basically like 1,000 National Guardsmen surrounding the courthouse in it might be not 1,000, but there's scores of National Guardsmen around the courthouse in Minneapolis, and they have barbed fences with barbed wire, and just a massive presence, guarding the city's nerve center. And Tucker was making the point that well, yes, all the pencil pushers and the city administrators are all going to be protected, but what about the jurors when they go home? And so, well, what effect is that intimidation going to have on the jurors? But how many people know that about that situation in Minneapolis and what a war zone it's becoming? I mean, nobody knows it.
Well, I mean, it's good because it will radicalize people locally, right, that are witnessing their livelihood and community change. So, I mean, it's a visual symbol of the oppression that our people are facing right now.
Then again, people watch their communities get destroyed for what, 50, 70, 100, 200, 500, 2,000 years, and usually they just pack up their shit and move 10 miles away.
Well, I mean, it's the difficult thing is that it's difficult to know what to, so many the problems are so complex at this point. For somebody who wants to do something, it's difficult to you've got a limited number of extra hours per week that you could spend doing something. What do you do? Even if you want to help, how do you help? And I don't know. I mean, because you have a system where you have city administrators. Just take a mismanaged city. Take Baltimore. How do you fix Baltimore? Where do you start? What?
You leave.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, that's a shithole.
Well, but to Bill's point, Bill's saying, well, we need to dig in and do something, as opposed to just leaving. And I don't know.
I mean, like if you're in a blue majority state, I mean, you should be gone by now. You have
and I guess
economic
that's kind
opportunity.
I guess that's kind of my point. I don't know if there's anything you can do. I mean, Warren Buffett said, when a terrific manager comes into contact with a dysfunctional organization, the organization wins.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter if you have a fantastic manager, somebody with great ideas. You're the dysfunctional entity is just too fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the answer is there, but I mean, if you're in a situation like that, it's probably best for you to, return to a place that's not hostile, a location that's safe, where you're with your people, and you can survive as a tribe. You know, I hate to get into that instinct and way of thinking, but like, I mean, what else do? You don't want to live in a Baltimore or a Minneapolis or Detroit or Chicago based off of the circumstances of the country right now.
Or hell, you don't even. I mean, it doesn't even have to be cities like that. I mean, or New York or L.A. You know, you have these erstwhile nice cities which have been horribly mismanaged. You know, who the fuck wants to live in San Francisco? People are
Yeah, and I
fleeing
mean,
San Francisco.
if our people moved out, it would just economically devastate that area. And I mean, it's probably just better from a voting perspective and a political perspective to be centralized in states that are either, more middle of the road or further right. Right? I mean, like, what's the sense in staying in California when chances are, you can either work online or find, better economic opportunities someplace else, and one, move to a state that probably needs your vote or your support or your presence there, rather than a shithole that's never going to go back to what it was.
Well, and I wonder. So I mean, that's a huge problem for the Democrats. You know, the fact that people can just leave Democrat controlled states. You know, they've just shit all over the state. They've fucking mismanaged it. Horribly, and then so people will start leaving. I wonder how the Democrats solve that problem. Because I guess one solution is to make everywhere awful. I mean, so I guess that's part of what the idea is with some of these different bills that are circulating or have been threatened to be circulated, which make it really hard for people in the suburbs to hang on to something that's worthwhile. I
Yeah,
don't
well, I
know.
mean, like in today's economy, especially with more and more jobs being online, you can really move out to distant places that, traditionally you couldn't. So, I mean, I'm not sure how they can really do a lot of damage if you can move out to a state like Idaho or Wyoming or just some place where you have an internet connection.
I don't know. I mean, like, clearly, if enough people are leaving some of these massive Democrat states, they're gonna try to do something.
Yeah.
They've got to, because they're going to be hemorrhaging people. So I don't know.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
like Illinois is sort of L.A. and Illinois are sort of poster children for that. I mean, Garcetti or whatever his name is in Los Angeles was just celebrating the fact that he got $2 billion. That the Los Angeles got a $2 billion windfall from the recent COVID package. I know, Illinois got a great package as well. Illinois is horribly mismanaged and terribly in the red. So,
Everybody's got a price. Everybody's gonna pay. 'Cause the $1 million man always gets his way.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it just comes down to demographic warfare, right? In the sense of political demographic warfare. It's been used for a millennia. Just outpopulating your enemy or whatever. So if people could just move to locations that are, strategically more beneficial and have the income and opportunity to do so, I don't know why you wouldn't.
Well, sentimentality, inertia. It's tough to move. Tough to get off
Yeah,
your
but like if you're in like some shithole like in Los Angeles or Chicago, and I mean, you look around you and you see the faces and people change, and you see just everything go to shit and get run down. How can you stay? Because you're literally just your assets are reducing in value, right? I mean, your home values just sinking, everything. I mean, it just hurts by the day to stay there.
Yeah, I think a lot of people aren't aren't motivated by money at a certain point, especially older folks. And it just I know a bachelor in a major city that this exact situation has happened to him. And he could live anywhere he wants. And he just refuses. He doesn't even have that many friends, and he just refuses to leave. So I think
Why?
people are creatures of habit. Like they love the familiarity of what they've always known, and I think that's really tough. And I think the lesson for our listeners and for ourselves is, we've got to be a lot more adaptable than our people have ever been, and we can't latch on to that kind of sentimentality about things, even the sentimentality of what we used to think we knew about economics and about monetary policy, right? There is a path ahead. There are ways to make money right now. There are profitable things that you can do, but it's painful, it's risky, it involves a lot learning new things, being a lot of challenging things, and it might all blow up in our face too.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I'm wondering. I think I don't know. I mean, they tried to start doing this. They tried to start limiting travel. Within the continental United States, and they did kind of limit travel within the continental United States. Between like New York and New Jersey, they were pulling some shit with that, which is completely unconstitutional.
Yeah.
However, I mean, so they play around with that when there is, COVID. Well, what about non-COVID times? What if people are trying to move from, California to Texas, or from California to Florida, or something like that? I mean, I don't know. I mean, how do you stop this sort of flight, capital flight from your states? I think because it's not in on the contrary, they aren't changing their policies in these states. They're doubling down.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yep.
I wonder how they're going to start fucking with people more.
Yeah, there's no limit to the fuckery, that's for sure. So if you had $50,000 right now, or you had a friend with somewhere in that neighborhood, what should they be investing in? Right? What is our investment advice for the next year?
Drugs.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
I would say skills, things that set you apart from other people in new developing technologies and fields.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I like that one. That's a smart one. Well, what specific skills? Let's drill down on that a little more.
I mean, anything software related, because that's something that you can do anywhere in the world. So if you had to leave, your place of residence, you could probably still operate and function and find work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any type of construction.
Huh.
Hey, but I mean, didn't we just place bets on the housing market, like destroying itself? So that's kind of a two-factored, right?
Yeah.
Malik.
Yeah. Well, I guess my point is that in terms of different industries that are always going to need people, construction, the trades, the economy is going to need people like that for a while.
You better watch the fuck out. They're going to be 3D printing mud huts for us in a minute.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you're still, I mean, yes, but I mean, it's going to be difficult to just raise entire cities and throw up mud huts.
Yeah, I was being facetious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and so the construction sort of skills translate well internationally to a certain extent as well. So if you had found yourself having to leave the United States, you could at least use those skills somehow.
Yeah.
You know, like for example, if you had to move to Eastern Europe, you know,
a lot of decent opportunities there. I think my answer would be, there's a lot of online courses, and a lot of them are really trash. But I've found a few that are good for financial literacy. And I think that, to kind of play off of Malik's answer, that there are certain topics that everyone should know. And I think if you don't know what the blockchain is, like if you don't know what crypto is, those are two huge topics that are very intimidating, I think, for middle-aged folks. But if you have the money sitting around right now and the time, you should at least learn what these are. And then the other thing too is just the basic financial literacy for investing. I've been shocked at how many people don't have that. And if you don't have it, there are courses you can pay for that will teach them to you. So we've got to know how to play these games, because this is going to be with us longer than COVID, or all the financial and funny money games that our elites play with us.
yeah. Beyond that, I have no idea. I mean, everybody says coding and stuff like that. Not everybody's geared for that. So I don't know. I'm not sure where I have no idea. If I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, I have no idea what I'd be doing.
I mean, it's really easy to pick up coding. I mean, if you're just a little bit right-brained, I mean, you can pick it up real fast. It's just a lot of memorization. Like once it's kind of like learning a new language. You just need to understand the grammar, and you're off to the races.
And I think it's good to know coding, but I think in terms of being profitable with it, that's probably not going to be a source of real revenue for most people, unless you really went whole hog in it.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of technical skills that can be developed and learned, and applied online, whether it be 3D modeling. There's a bunch of stuff that you can do, and that might not be a gig, but large corporations need these skills, and you'd be surprised how far a certificate in XYZ really goes.
Yeah. And I think one thing too, just to bring everything to a conclusion, is that we should be educated and savvy enough that we are playing into these fads and paying, making money off of these kind of irrational trends and bubbles, rather than being subject to them. And I find a lot of our people are complaining about the housing bubble, and it's like, well, we should be hustling to the point where we're making money on this somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we need to be in the mindset of doing that, and not just bitching about how the world is.
Yeah, being proactive, being a mover and a shaker, making it happen somehow.
Right.
All right. Well, I guess that's about it. Thank you. This is Rick Smith, and with me, as always, Bill Clay. Thank you for joining us, Malik.
Yep. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes. Who doesn't want to be on Crimethink? Crimethink. Crimethink. Crimethink.
Stink hoes. Stink hoes. Stink hoes. Stink hoes. Stink hoes. I want pussy for free. I want pussy for free. You cannot have my money. I want pussy for free. I want pussy for free. I want pussy. but fuck y'all, let me bounce this ball. Screw face your bitches, food on y'all. He won't slip, won't trip, won't ever fall. Bitch, you obey me, you better not betray me. Be calling no cops saying this is his baby.